Before we head over to the shop and start our layout project, we're going to go over some terms and some different ways of you to work around when you get to lay out your lines out there. So some of the terms that are important for you to know are how to bisect an angle, how to run perpendicular lines, an arc, a chord. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to show you here on the board how it's supposed to be. So the first thing that I want you to know is when you're laying out lines, you will start with a straight line, as straight as it can be. Okay, and once you have a straight line, you want to run a perpendicular line, and this is one of the things that you want to start thinking about as of now. Perpendicular lines are basically lines which are at right angles from each other. So over here, that would be a perpendicular line. The term bisect, meaning bisect something means to divide into equal parts. So how do we go about bisecting a line? So when we have a straight line, I have a little tool here that hopefully I'm gonna be able to make it work. And this tool allows me to actually create an arc. An arc basically is a part of a circle, so I'm not going to create the full circumference. I'm going to go just to make an arc. So I'll attempt to open up my tool, and that is an arc. So as you can see here, we have our straight line. We have our first arc that was created with this tool here. And I labeled A and B so that you understand where I'm heading with it. So when we started at A. We did our first arc. Now I'm going to go over to B, and hopefully I can make it work again and place it in. And that would be my second arc. So went from A to the center, went from B to the center, and there is my second arc. Now that we have created the two arcs on our straight line, these two arcs, the bisecting of these two arcs will allow us to create a perpendicular line that would be exactly 90 degrees to the original line. So here is your perpendicular line. If you were to take a look at here, we would have a 90 degrees right there. So what we have now, perpendicular lines, we have our arc. We labeled our X and Y here to make sure that you understand that this is our second line. And now, how does this apply to when we go to the shop? Well, when you're in the shop and you're performing alignment or leveling, you're going to have a machine. Let's call this machine the prime mover. And we're going to have a top view of what I'm drawing right now. So this is our top view. And then let's call this, this will be our motor, and this will be our pump, which also has mounting brackets. Excuse me. And this would be joined together with couplings. So what we have here now is this motor and pump that need to be placed, and for you to place it perfectly aligned, you need to have knowledge on straight edge, straight lines, and you transfer this ones as you'll see now, my straight line would be represented right there, which now this becomes our line A, this becomes our line B, and we put an X and a Y here, which would then represent, and if they were straighter than that would be better, but X and Y. So this would apply for every single one of them, okay? All right, so now that we have some more information on what we're going to do, we know about base plates, we know about salt plates, we know about a certain equipment, a certain machine, pump, motor. Our next step would be to find a place in the shop where we're supposed to be laying it down and proceed to lay out your lines. So one of the first things you do is you take measurements from the machines itself, you record the measurements, and then you proceed to transfer them to the ground. So what I'm going to show you here is this was done already for us, and the first thing is when you start laying out, you have your straight line, as you can see here. That's the line that we just explained out in the classroom. We also have our arcs divided there, and that actually was also explained, and you can see that this little sections here are where the mounting holes are going to be. So the method that we use for this is what you can see here. All right, so another method that we're going to show you now is a very common method used out there. You might have heard about this method. It's a little more common depending on where you work. But this method is called the 3-4-5 method. Okay, this you would achieve the same thing as you would with the methods that we showed you before. In some cases it's a little easier, in some cases it can be a bit challenging too. But again, it serves as the purpose of finding that 90-degree line so that we can run that perpendicular line there. So what this one includes having measurements added to it. So if we were having this line here as our main center line, we would have to come with a perpendicular line up here and with a long straight line, which is the hypotenuse in a triangle, which will add to a number, and the number is the 3, 4, 5. So your shortest leg would be 3, the longest leg would be 5. So let's just pretend here that we will have measurements to it. So this would be 4, so this would be 3. And if this line is perfectly to 90, you would have five. Okay, so this is our 3-4-5 method. When you're out in the field, sometimes you have to adjust your lines. If you're using chuck line, if you're using different tools out there, you might have to adjust it so that your measurements from one side to the other are exactly, in this case 5, this case 4, this case 3. So again, finding your right angle, 90 degrees. So if we were out in the field and you have the pump or the motor, this would apply the same way as what we showed you in the previous videos.